Hey guys, it's Mitch from Switchback LED Lighting here again with our fourth part of the custom VF headlight series. To start off, the paint's been drying for 2 or 3 full days, just so we know it's definitely dry. So for the next step I'm gonna do is swap out these projector lenses for some honeycomb lenses, which I've got here. These aren't etched on. I don't etch these. These are etched off site, so I get them in. I send these plain ones off to be etched and then get them back. So the only thing that's holding these in, we've got 1 Phillips screw and 2 Phillips screw that holds this bezel in, which keeps the projector in. So once we undo these with a Phillips head screwdriver, like so, I'm going to lift this off. And our lens is literally just sitting in there, so it comes out just like so. So I'm going to grab one of the honeycomb etched projector lenses, sit that in the position, line it up with the frame. As you can see, it's lined up with the angle of the frame. And then all I'm going to do is pop that brace back on and do the screws up. And that will keep him in that position. Cool. So there's a before and after with those lenses. So I'm going to do this one off camera, and then we'll be up to the next part. If I can get this to sit there, and then we'll be up to the next part. So both of these are done now. I've got both the projector frames finished. The next thing I'm going to do is grab our high beam shroud for the correct side, which will be this one. Yes, it will be this one. How do we know it's the right one? They're both backwards. Our screw holes will line up. It'll sit in there like that. And yeah, as I said, our screw holes will line up. The other one's actually opposite, so it actually won't go in. So let's take into consideration the orientation of the shroud. So we've got that little, if I can do this little flap at the bottom of there. So we'll put that frame away. What we're going to do is basically mount our high beam projector in. So these are our projectors that we're going to be installing in the high beam. I've already prepped these and obviously put the halo on there as well. So what I can do to show you exactly what I did is get a kit. We sell these on our website. This is what you get in the kit. You get projector lens, and you get your shroud. So your projector lens, your projector shroud, and some bits and pieces for your projector. This is to install it. So basically all I've done is we've got our solenoid cable here. This is if you want to use your projector in a single bulb headlight. We don't need this for our high beam. We don't want this cut off in. So all we do there is take out our 4 Phillips screws. This black piece comes off, and this little frame, you take that out and discard it. For your shroud just sits over the top. It only goes on one way, so it'll be that way. You then need some, I can include these in the kits, they're 8 gauge by 20 mil long wood screws, so they can just bolt through there. That keeps the projector shroud on. In terms of installing the halo, like I have here, what we want to do first is, we can see this lip, if it'll focus in on the lip. It may not. There's a little lip anyway on here that I take off with normally either a Dremel or an angle grinder with a flappy disc, and just take that off, so we've got more of a mount for the halo ring itself. As you can see, this sits flat, so all it's using is the double tape on the ring, and I've put 2 little, this is the bottom of the projector, I've put 2 little bits of super glue on there to keep it into position if for some reason it happens to, the double-sided tape happens to fail. But cool. So you take that lip off. You need to drill a 5 mil hole in the bottom of the projector for the cabling to go through. As you may be able to see in this shot, that's where our cable goes through. It just goes straight through the projector and out here. I've de-pinned the plug, which, here's the plug. I've de-pinned it so I can fit the wiring through the 5 mil hole that I did. So that's pretty much good on the prep work for the projector. So basically the step that we need to do here is we're going to install this projector into the high beam shroud. To do this, we need to drill a 5 mil hole about here on the bottom of the high beam shroud. That's so, again, our cable can get through. 2, we need, where our high beam H9 bulb mounted, we need to take these little mounting points off because we're not going to be using them, so the projector thread will poke through and sit flush on here. So I'll show you how to do that. It's super easy the way that I do this. You'll need a pair of side cutters, obviously a drill and a 5 mil drill bit. So I've got the drill here, so I'm just going to show you exactly. I'm going to drill from the outside because it's cleaner, and I'm just going to take a guess at around, I'd say halfway between the hole and this angle change. So we're going to drill a hole about there. So I'll do that now. As I said, 5 mil drill bit. It's super soft to drill through. So that's done. So, alright, it was a little more than half, it was about a quarter where I've put it, but that's the positioning that we want. On the inside, there's our hole, so our projector will sit over that, our cable will go through there. So the next part I'll show you, I'm going to grab some side cutters. Got our side cutters. So as you can see, we've got these little braces. All I'm going to do is take these side cutters and trim that side brace, and the whole thing comes off. So that's all you need to do. I normally clean these up a little bit with the Dremel. I won't do that on camera, but same with this one. It comes off. Now we've got a flush mounting point for that projector. So I'll grab our projector itself, and we're going to need that little tool kit, or mounting kit, sorry. And I'm chopping screws everywhere. So we're going to need this bit of rubber. This bit of rubber sits through there. So basically all I'm going to do now is put the cable through the hole I drilled. I normally do one at a time, it's a lot easier to get them through. 5mm is just big enough to fit all three of them through, so when it decides to come through, which it has, so I've got him through, going through the hole now. I'm just gonna feed it through, and then pull as much through as possible. Make sure she's all lined up, and then our projector thread comes through here. We're going to use our H7 mount, which is just a big washer essentially, but I'm going to pop that over the thread that's poking through. You do need to put a fair bit of pressure on that, and then we're going to grab wherever it is. Oops. Let's just double check that I've taken the nut off. Yeah, I was wondering where the nut was. I left it on there. There is a nut on the top there. So preferably take that off before you put that rubber bit on. So we'll try that again. Pop him through. Our H7 washer, and then our nut will go on the top. So once this is in, get a better shot of how it's mounted together. Now this nut, I'll have to double check the size. I'm pretty sure it's 27mm socket off the top of my head. So this is how it's mounted. You can't even see the cable going through in there, which is what you want. Our glue is at the bottom, so you won't see it. And pretty much that's how she's going to go. So I'm just going to get a socket to fit this. Pretty sure it's 27, and we're going to do this up. We're going to do this up tight, holding this side. We're going to do it up, and then your projector's installed on, which is wicked. So we'll do that. I'll grab that socket and get back. So So I'm back. I've done that up with a 27mm socket and just a bar, which I've got here. I've done that up. Now the ring, if we can see here, is sitting flush where our globe bracket is going to mount. So this is our globe bracket. This sits on top. So these headlights change to a H1 globe. The globe bracket, all that stuff comes in the kit. So all I'm going to do, it's got 3 Phillips screws. I've got 1 in there now, and then there's 2 more which are here. I'm going to do them up, and then we'll get to the next part. So that's on. As you can see, I've popped those 3 screws in there. We've got the wire. The wire is what keeps the bulb in, similar to the standard one. I'm going to leave that off for now. I'm going to grab the correct frame, and using the bolts that we put aside earlier, just make sure that, so we put the cable through, pop the cable through, and I'm going to grab our screws, the bigger screws from earlier, and bolt our high beam shroud and projector back onto the frame. So I've got them here, in the little box. So yeah, the bigger out of the 2 screws. So they're pretty easy to identify. You also will have some left over too from that H1, H8, H9 shroud. So I'm going to pop those screws in, because we're pretty much done with the projector now. Well, the high beam shroud. So we'll do these up and we'll get back to you. So that's all mounted up to the frame. Got a honeycomb on both low and high beam, and we've got our bulb bracket on. So that'll be put to the side for now. Now I'm going to work on the low beam shrouds. I've got some 90mm halos here. Grab one. 90mm halos. They'll pretty much sit in here like this. So similar to the high beam, we're going to drill a small hole in the bottom, 5mm hole in the bottom, to pop the cable through and get that mounted up. So these rings come with double-sided tape all around. Where the wire comes through, I'm going to cut this piece out. I'll show you what I mean by that when I find the scissors. I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm just going to peel back the double-sided tape, and where the actual cable is going to go through, I'm just trying to get rid of the double-sided tape around that area, if that makes sense. So I'll show you what I've done there. So I've taken the tape away just so the cable's got somewhere to go. So after we've done that, we're going to need to deep-in the plug. So we're going to need something small and pointy. I've got these little tweezer looking things that I normally use. So all we're basically doing to deep-in these is pressing on the back side of it to bend the tab down and just pulling the wire out. So I'll deep-in this plug It is quite easy to do. 2 and 3. So there you go, there's our plug. It's depinned. That's going to mean that when we go and put this on to our shroud, we can get our cables through. So I'm going to drill my hole in the bottom of this, and then we're going to be ready to mount the halo. So as you can see, I've drilled my hole. So all I'm going to do now, poke the cable through. May as well do that on camera for you to see. I normally do one at a time, as I said before, with the high beam. So once that's through, we can pull the whole halo through. So we've got him like this. Pretty much. You can just take the double-sided tape away, push him into the position we sort of want him in, which is roughly there where I've got it. We're going to pull the tape off and stick him down. So I'll do that now. Peel the double-sided tape off. Before you push down on it, line it up. That feels pretty good. I wasn't happy with that, so I actually did pull it back out. That's a bit better. That's a bit better this time. So after we've stuck that in, we're going to push firmly. I normally hold it for about 10 seconds, push firmly on the ring. Just like this. Pushing firmly, just to make sure it's actually stuck. Now at the bottom where our cable goes through, I'm actually going to put a bit of glue just in case. Just thinking about like in summer where it can get hot and the stickiness of some double-sided tapes don't tend to work in summer. So all I'm going to do is put a little bit of super glue. Just 2 little notches of super glue, and I've got some pretty much instant curing spray that I normally use, and it dries it straight away. So as you can see, I've popped that on and that's already dry now, so that's that one done. I'm going to go and do the other one while I'm here, while I've got the other one on, and then we'll get to the next step. Alright, so now the second frame is together. We're up to the next part, which is installing the aftermarket breathers on the headlight housing. These only come with one breather from factory, and they're prone to fogging up no matter what you do. So half of this is going to be used for where we route our halo cables out, and pretty much we're going to put 2 aftermarket breathers. They're just a bolt-on breather. We're going to put them in each headlight. So the positions I normally work with are just above our power cable. So I'm going to grab my impact driver and Christmas tree, and I believe it's a, trying to remember what size hole it is. I believe it's a 16, possibly. No, sorry, it's a 10. It's a 10mm hole, so I'm gonna was a guess. I'm going to have to go one bigger than that. So what a breather does is lets the outside air and the air inside the headlight to be the same temperature. If it's the same temperature, it limits condensation. So we've done a hole, pop your breather in, and then on the other side, it's going to be hard to see, but you just put the nut on the other side to keep it in there. Do it up nice and tight when I get it on there. And do them up nice and tight. So in the end it'll look like that. I normally do one over this side of the headlight and one over this side of the headlight. If we keep them separate, at separate ends, it's going to be better. So this is the mount, this is the spot I normally put the second one. So making sure there's nothing in the way behind it when we drill our hole. Drill our hole, like so. And we're going to bolt our breather in. This one's actually tricky to get the nut on the back. I normally bend the indicator, the top indicator, plug down to get to it, but once it's screwed in, that's it, we can bend him back up. So there's our two breathers installed. We've got one over here on this side of the headlight, one over here on this side of the headlight. This will help with condensation. We've still got our factory one. We're going to be using one side for our halo cables to route through. So I'm going to go ahead and do this to the other one, do the last two to the other one, and then we're pretty much ready to put the frames back in and pretty much ready to seal them back up. We'll be back. Alright, so they're both in. Now we're ready to put the frames in. So what we've got to do is figure out which is which. I believe that it'll be the other one. So this one will go in this side, like so, because our high beam's on the inside. So all we're going to do that is pretty much line our two locators, our adjustments in, like so. Whether you can see me, yes you can see me. Locate those, pretty much hold them into position while you do the screws up on the other side. So I'm going to get these done up. Our next step is all we're going to do is put a slit in our breather there and route our halo cables through. One thing to note when putting this back in is that our bottom locator clips in. So at the moment I've done these up, but it's actually not clipped in, so it probably won't adjust properly when we want it to. So I'm just going to put a bit of pressure on that. Use the back of my ratchet, and that looks better. And I'm pretty sure that's in. So fairly certain that's in now, which it does look like it is. What I might do is grab the Phillips screwdriver sure it's in. Yeah, it looks like it's in. So we've got this frame in. If you did take note when you took it out, the outside one's only a little bit through. Your inside one's a fair way through, so you'll have to readjust these when they go back on the car. Once they're readjusted, you're usually pretty good. So I've routed the high beam halo cable through here, so that just comes out the back here. So that's how I normally do these, and then I'll just put a cable tie around this end so it can't be pulled through. So I'm going to go and fit up the other frame to the other headlight housing. I've done the breathers on this one as well, and yeah, we'll get that done and she's almost ready to go back together. So the frames are all back in, halos are on, projectors installed. Basically now I'm going to start putting a frame, our indicators and our low beam shrouds all back together. So our frames are all installed, as you can see there. Our next step is to pretty much put all these pieces, bolt them all back together like we took them apart. So we'll do that up there. Okay guys, so our last step in part 4 is pretty much put all these back together. So I'm going to start off with the indicator lens. Just going to give it a wipe out on the inside and wipe the newly painted part out as well. Make sure there's no dust and whatnot. So this goes straight on. Sometimes when you find the right spot. So make sure these clips all pop back in. Even the ones underneath, like that. That's it. So that's pretty much all back in. Our next part is our low beam shroud. Our low beam shroud just pretty much sits, the long bit notches in here and sits in here, and the low beam part obviously wiggles in and sits flush against there, which we'll just double check if that's correct. It looks pretty right. And that, so I can put a few screws in the back here, hold those two bits apart, go through all the screws you've got for the most common, the long sort of lanky looking ones. So I'm going to put 2, 3, 4 screws in this part, just so it holds it together. It's 1. So I'll move the camera down so you can see a bit better, but I've put 2, 3, so I'll put 4 screws in there, and the one in the end as well. Okay, so that'll all stay in now, so that's not going to go anywhere. Next we've got our high beam part. That pretty much slides, if we can see here, it pretty much slides in onto our low beam like so, like that. So put that into the position, flip it over, I'm going to put some screws in. You'll be able to know the screws that need to go in because you'll see where they all line up to. So I've done 3 so far. I've got 4. And 5. So I'm pretty sure that'll be all of them. That will be all of them, except that one at the bottom. There's also one at the bottom you can do, which pretty much just bolts it all together. So that's all those. Pretty much now, we just need to grab our frame. So flip all this around. The trick with the frame to get this on is hook it around the indicator side of the headlight first before you try and get the rest of it. Otherwise it's just not going to work. So I've hooked it around this end and now it should just go in on its own when you play around with it a little bit. Like that. Like that. Yeah, that's what we like to hear. So that's all sitting flush in there now. So I'm gonna again flip this around. Start off with this screw because this pretty much lines everything up. So all of these ones will be all around the outside. So we've got, what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screws to go in there. We'll pop those screws in and come back. Alright, so our last step is pretty much to one. This is the lens, obviously. I'm going to wipe out the inside of the lens. It shouldn't be dirty anyway, because there's been no hands or anything on the inside. I'll wipe that out. I'm going to put that aside and grab our piece that's together. I'm going to wipe all this out, make sure there's no dust and whatnot on it, because that's the last thing you want to see from the outside is dust and fingerprints and whatnot. But that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. So in this step, we're going to pop the frame back into the lens. So I'll put this side in first, so the high beam side in first, and line it up with the screws. And then we're just going to pretty much let go of it and drop it. The only thing stopping it now is this little screw part here. So I'm just going to push that out of the way and drop it in. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws around the outside, and then that'll be in properly. So I'll do that. I'll put those screws in and then get back. Alright, so that's back together. The outside of the lens is pretty dirty, so we'll cover that a little bit later. But that's pretty much it for part 4. The last part will be pretty much resealing the headlights, so stay tuned for that. I'll hopefully get that out in the next couple of days. But I'm gonna obviously copy this for the other one. Clean up the lens, make sure there's no annoying marks or anything on the inside, just to make sure that they're gonna look awesome when they're back together, and they've come up really well. I'm very happy with how these have came out. So thanks for watching again. Stay tuned for part 5, and yeah, catch you next time.